At issue tonight, the Speaker resigns.
I accept full responsibility for my actions.
A new turn in a scandal that began Friday when Anthony Rota called on the House to pay tribute to a Nazi-aligned war veteran.
My resignation is effective at the end of the sitting day tomorrow.
The shock and embarrassments are still being felt across the country, and political accountability is still being demanded, this time of the Prime Minister.
Will he stand up and apologize to Canadians, to the Jewish community, to the Ukrainian people, and to the entire world for this mess that he helped create?
So how bad is the damage and what might happen next? I'm Rosemary Barton, here to break it down with us tonight. Andrew Coyne, Althia Raj, and Aaron Wary steps up for Chantal tonight. Thanks for that, and good to see you all on a Tuesday. Andrew, let's start with you. How bad is the damage here, and does the resignation do enough to sort of overcome some of it?
Well, the damage is clearly enormous, not only in terms of the reputation of Parliament and of Canada, not only in terms of the implied insult, however inadvertent, to the victims of Nazism, and not only, perhaps especially to the war effort in Ukraine in terms of the propaganda victory that this handed the Russians. I was not initially persuaded that the Speaker had to resign over it. I thought it was an honest mistake. I was worried that he was being made the fall guy for decisions made elsewhere. I think it's pretty clear that this is part of the healing process, that you do need somebody to take this very direct responsibility. I think nothing has really come out that has shown that the Prime Minister's office was involved in this. So I think this is certainly step one of a larger process of addressing this. There's still work to be done, I think, on the immediate consequence of this, and obviously there's also work to be done to make sure that nothing like this happens again.
And it has sort of laid bare a little bit, Althia, I think, maybe some of the problems in having an independent Speaker. It's wonderful for the functioning of Parliament, but it does mean that they have a lot of power, and power can result in making pretty big mistakes too.
Sure, that's an interpretation I had not heard before, I gotta say, Rosie. I don't think it's a problem with having an independent Speaker. I mean, I think part of the problem is with all of this and the political response to this, and for this really I'm talking about the Conservatives, is people don't seem to understand how Parliament works, how our governance system works, and misinformation is being allowed to spread. The legislature and the executive are separate. The executive is accountable to the legislature. The Speaker is chosen by a majority of members of Parliament through a secret ballot process. And frankly, you know, for all the Conservatives calling Anthony Rota a Liberal Speaker, yes, he is a Liberal, but he doesn't caucus with the Liberals. And if it weren't for their support, he actually wouldn't even be in the chair. It would be another Liberal, Jeff Regan, who might still be Speaker, might still be a member of Parliament. I don't think it's a problem with having an independent Speaker. I think with power comes responsibility, and someone did not do their job in the office of the independent Speaker of the House of Commons. And you expect somebody at that level to be able to do the checks that are to ensure that the people that are not just your guest in the House of Commons, but if you're going to publicly recognize them, that they are who you think they are. And that was not done. And that's not the Prime Minister's fault. And that's not the Leader of the official opposition's fault. That's the fault of somebody in the Speaker's office, maybe the Speaker himself. Yeah,
and I'm not suggesting the Speaker shouldn't be independent here. I'm just saying that part of it is that all these decisions were made by him. And so you're right, the responsibility was his, and as was the mistake. Aaron.
Yeah, I think that really gets underlined this week, the importance and the responsibility of that job. Look, the Speaker's not supposed to be the problem. The Speaker's not supposed to be a source of controversy for Parliament. And that was the first problem, I think, for Anthony Rota. The second problem is that in this case, the mistake, the controversy was so public, so glaring, hurtful, embarrassing, and even a propaganda victory for Russia. It was just such a massive mistake, and it underlined, you know, how important that job is and how important it is to do it well. And in this case, you know, maybe there was some chance, if there was any chance that Anthony Rota could hang on this week, I think it was quickly extinguished by the response of the opposition parties, of even, you know, Government House Leader Karina Gould's comments about, you know, when MPs listen to the Speaker and the Speaker says this person is in the gallery and let's honor them, that the MPs implicitly trust that the Speaker knows what he's doing. And in this case, that trust was broken. And I think the only reason Anthony Rota resigned, today instead of yesterday is that the Conservatives, in their zeal to try to pin the blame on Trudeau, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, that they sort of sidestepped the idea of whether Anthony Rota should resign. It was just such an incredible mistake that there was really kind of no way for the Speaker to come back from this.
So talk a little bit about the politics of it, Andrew. On the one side, the Conservatives trying to stick it to the Prime Minister any way they could. And on the other side, what the Prime Minister and the government now has to do to try and, amend some of these fences, whether it was their fault or not, and it wasn't in this case.
Yeah, and I'll say, that this, not every solution has to be found in the Prime Minister's office. Whoever becomes the next speaker can take steps and make those steps known to make sure this never happens again. Sure. That being said, I think there's stuff the Prime Minister could have done, not now, but days ago. I think, yes, it's true that the Conservatives were trying to pin all the blame on him. I think in his zeal, or the zeal of his people around him, not to have the blame attached to him, he missed an opportunity to get out in front of this, as I think he should have, and represent Canada on this. This wasn't just something that was afflicting the reputation of the Speaker or of Parliament, but of Canada. And the Prime Minister on day one could have and should have got out in front of this and said, this is a terrible thing that's happened. We are mortified. On the behalf of the people of Canada, I want to apologize. That doesn't mean that you're accepting blame for it. You can apologize for things that you didn't do yourself.
Althia.
I agree with Andrew, and I hope that he says that tomorrow as he's scheduled to be in the House of Commons, or we expect him to be in the House of Commons. I also think, frankly, all MPs could have done that, right? I mean, they were all responsible for saluting somebody that they're deeply ashamed to have honored. And I was shocked today that Pierre Poilievre said, no, he doesn't need to apologize. It's not up to him to apologize. Just because you are not responsible for having that individual in the chamber, you're responsible for your own actions. And I feel like we're living in this era where no one wants to take responsibility for political reasons. And I find that deeply troubling. The other thing I think Andrew touched on that I also find really troubling with Mr. Poilievre's criticism is he telling us that if he were Prime Minister, he would personally want to vet the independent Speaker of the House of Commons guests, that he believes that the Prime Minister's hand should go into the minister in charge, or the president of the independent House of Commons, and decide how the legislature should be doing their business. This is really deeply troubling. And I feel like in the heat of trying to pin partisan blame, we are misinforming the public rather than using this as an education opportunity.
Okay, Erin, so what, I mean, you can talk about the Conservatives certainly, but also what you would expect from the government now in terms of action beyond saying, this was a terrible thing that happened.
Yeah, I think Althia is right. The Prime Minister, there's some onus on the Prime Minister now to make some kind of statement when he next meets the House. To kind of address the issue. I do think the Conservative arguments that this is the Prime Minister's fault have been specious, and I do think that has knocked a larger debate about the Prime Minister's responsibility kind of off track. There is a decent case to be made that the Prime Minister should still be making some kind of statement, or apologizing to President Zelensky privately, some kind of gesture, even if the entire responsibility for this falls on Parliament and now former Speaker Anthony Rota. I think the next step after that, though, is that it really comes back to whoever the next Speaker is, and his or her ability to get Parliament past this moment, to restore some of the credibility the place has lost. We talk about Parliament and the institution and the importance of it and how people maybe don't have as much respect for it. It's taken a huge hit over the last week. And, now it goes way beyond whether or not question period is too unruly or whether there's enough decorum. And it goes really to the institution. And I think the next Speaker needs to take that much more seriously and make that much more of a concerted effort to address it.
Last word to you, and Andrew, on whether this is something Canada can get past.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a blow. It's an awful moment, but we'll get past it. I think it'll be interesting to see what proposals come forward from whoever's the next Speaker. I don't think it's wrong to have maybe have it run his or her choices past some independent, some second pair of eyes. It doesn't have to be in the Prime Minister's office, but something so that there's a level of redundancy, because basically everyone was depending on somebody else to do the right thing here. And if somebody makes an egregious error, there doesn't seem to be a fail-safe.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you all for being here on a Tuesday. I'll see two of you on Thursday. Erin, I'll see you in the newsroom. Thanks, everybody. I'll send things back to Adrienne now in Toronto.